Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the Anchore open source gardening session we do every Thursday, where we go through some work and you get to follow along. So I'm joined by my good friends and colleagues around me, Alex, Keith, Chris, and Dan. They represent the open source developers at Anchore. And if you don't know, Anchore are the developers, primary sponsors of Syft and Grype that you can see on screen here. Syft being a wonderful SBOM generator and Grype being the vulnerability scanner, both very popular utilities that are used by a lot of people, and people rely on these things. So we better do a good job. We have a whole bunch of other open source tools and utilities and libraries, and most of it's written in Go. Some of it's written in Python. I think those are the only two languages. We haven't got any Rust or anything weird like that, have we? Or Zig yet. Are we going to skip Rust and go straight to Zig? That'll be it.
That's the real question, yeah.
All the cool kids are.
The secret kernel Zig project, right?
Excellent. I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about. You can find all our open source stuff on GitHub if you go to Anchor, github.com/Anchor. And we have a little discourse where you can chat with us, and I put announcements and stuff like that. I'm going to dive in. Well, we normally talk about the triaging stuff and anything that's got needs discussion. Should we get those out of the way first, and then any other discussion topics you want to have?
Let's do it.
So, any of these we didn't do last time.
Well, I think Keith actually put some needs discussion, like actually labeled needs discussion on a few. Yeah.
Sweet. There you go.
Tell me if I lied, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. So we'll start with Grype 2656. Is that okay?
Sure thing.
Sweet. I've lost the little chat window. I was going to paste it to you guys, but there we go. So, Linux kernel ignored if type is set to operating system in cyclone-dx SBOM.
Yes. So this one is kind of a simple one where we only import certain types of cyclone-dx components, libraries, frameworks, application, something or other
Files.
And we don't import operating system. We don't really have a Syft package type that represents operating system. And we didn't have vulnerabilities in the Grype database before, but now we recently started including the O type CPEs. So we potentially could match against operating system type components in Grype if somebody had them in an SBOM. And so I guess this was just a general question. Should we start including it? What would we need to do? Maybe a new package type or something else? And yeah, that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's funny because we say we had a package, no other alterations today, and we had CPEs that had like O-type CPEs on them. I don't know if I've tried if that just works. I think it does. And is there like would we need any other alteration? Like, is there a benefit to adding another kind of abstraction in Syft to represent it? I think like one con of not making any other alteration is that it's not clear if this is a package on your system or if it represents another system. Like, what's the relationship between this and other things? That might be one thing, but I lack what other thing which like should this just simply be a package type where it says OS or something like or is it something more? Where we talk, and this is where we like open up the bag of like multiple sources. Like in the past, we said, hey, an SBOM has one thing it's describing, and usually it's a container, but like in theory, like you could talk if you're on a host, like have that be like an operating system. And we haven't gone there yet, but then this opens up the source of like, well, it happens if you have an SBOM, which it wasn't necessarily scanning a system, but you wanted to describe multiple systems, multiple operating systems. You want multiple source objects to be there, and we've kind of closed that and said, hey, that sounds really complicated. Let's not do that. It seems like folks that want to do that are going to make very complicated SBOMs. When in reality, it's much more useful to break down SBOMs into smaller use cases. But at any rate, put it out there.
I have an answer while you were talking about that to what Grype does if we provide an operating system CPE to it. It will both Grype DB search and the scan return a whole table or all the DB search results for that CPE. So we are consuming them correctly at the moment.
Right, and I'm fairly certain this this user just changed the package type and left the CPEs the same, and everything worked exactly as they expected. So like from their perspective, if we could just import it as a package, then everything would be, you know, all hunky-dory in terms of matching and Grype.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a general and a specific. The specific one here, I was actually kind of looking at that type, right? And this is a Linux kernel, not Red Hat or whatever. And a general question is like, in Cyclone DX convention, is a kernel supposed to be of type operating system, or is it supposed to be of type framework? What's the convention?
I don't think I have an answer to that one. I would think it's type operating system, but I hesitate.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might be the thing to look into here, because like the specific here might be we should be using framework for kernels, and then everything is fine because that's the convention. I'm not sure.
To be fair,
Not the general that you guys were talking about, but
their documentation links to the Wikipedia entry on operating system, and it just says a software operating system without regard to deployment model. So that sentence plus referred to Wikipedia on operating system. That's the guidance.
There is one thing here though. If you look at the CPE that they're using, these are O CPEs.
True.
So that means someone somewhere in CPE land has said Linux kernel should be classified as an operating system.
right. But
Well, we don't know if all of their
doesn't have
packages have that.
right, and I don't think CPE has a concept of framework versus operating system. They only have like A, O, and H. It's not super nuanced.
Part of what I was wondering about, okay, because yeah, I agree in terms of like the Cyclone DX component type.
Yeah.
What should that be? But I'm also kind of curious because when we do a Syft convert, which is, or really just decoding from a target format into the Syft core models, we're converting those packages, which have component types, into packages with package types, and it's not one-to-one. So like we don't have like an operating system type or framework type. It's really just like, you know, I think it's container for second DX, and is there one for application? I cannot remember, but yeah, we don't have one for operating system. And so I'm kind of wondering, should we have one-to-one mappings of some of these component types for Cyclone DX as package types in Syft, so we're not losing some of this information? So I think some of this is lost either day, which is part of the ask.
It's a little weird because it's like kind of a three-dimensional problem from our format model case, because some of the types we have as siblings to packages right now, like a component type is file, and the files on the Syft SBOM are right next to packages. And we've talked about like moving forward, what it looks like if that like horizontal space grows of types. So you have like the packages, files, foo, then bar, like lists of all those different things. So it's how much of what's under Cyclone DX types become, you know, a subset of packages, and how much of them live in that real estate that packages and the packages and files list already take up on the model.
I mean, I think today we're taking 3 of the types only. I need to double check that. But I put a link into the Cyclone DX docs in the chat there. But I mean, they have application framework, library container, platform operating system, device driver, firmware, file, machine learning model, data, and cryptographic asset are all of the set of types that they have. And I don't think a lot of them, well, they could certainly map to packages, I suppose, in a broad sense.
But it's like, yeah, how much of the time are we going to throw one of these under that already created package list? And how many of the times, think about like machine learning model. That's like a whole other, probably separate section of the SBOM that's just as important or sibling related to the package and files as far as where it's located on the document. Because then you're able to, you're more easily able to do relationships between like those kind of core objects in the relationships part than it is to like navigate to certain types of packages, and then you'll have a relation of package to package. But then the nuance is that they're related. You have to find the types that they are. That it just get. I mean, it's a clarity of data problem basically in that case.
I mean, I think it's, it's a little bit of the same problem, right? If we have a bunch of specific types, like today we have file and package, and if we added an operating system type, then like from the perspective of writing code, we need to type assert to that, or we put things under package and we just, differentiate them by the type. It's kind of the same. We still have to figure it out, figure out what the thing is, but I don't know. I would be inclined to say that, back to the question that you asked, Alex, should we just import type, like any of the things that we're not explicitly mapping into a file, for example, into a package and just duplicate the Cyclone DX types? I might be inclined to say that is a good thing to do, just to try to be the least lossy.
All right. I mean, the hardest part is, okay, so in other words, like make certain, so pull in all component types in terms of but like we have a one-to-one of component type to package type. So we would add package types for the remaining Cyclone DX types that exist, such as OS, device driver, etc.
Right. I think, I mean, and if we did that, then, this particular thing would just work, because, someone would import something that has CPEs, we'd do CPE matching in Grype, and it would find the right thing.
Yeah. It makes me want to, instead of like put that in, there's kind of two ways I can think about it. Like one is if somebody was generating like a Syft JSON document, what would that expectations be? And two, what if somebody was just trying to see what the API can express? And so if I just look at the latter one for a second, like right now we have all the package types sitting in the package, PKB package. And it's just a set of constants. And I'm kind of resistant to like even putting a set of constants under there that represents a package, and really just leaving this underneath, say the format package somewhere. So like the format package would have, format specific package types that could be, so we can kind of separate like, oh, here's the package types. They're valid package types. They're strongly typed. But we would never expect to see these from like catalogers per se. And that would be a really good way to kind of separate that distinction. So like on the API, these package types live underneath format. So we know like only the encoders or decoders are responsible for using these. But in the package, we could, leave that alone, so to speak, but still use the same exact type. Might be a little in the weeds, but there's something about the specific suggestion of like, yeah, I agree with like the, make certain it's not lossy aspect, but then I hesitate at the like mixed things that are, not homogeneous, so to speak. I've got things that are things that are not really no longer packages anymore, being mixed in as packages in terms of how Syft defines a package. But I think that's okay in like the convert case when I'm encoding and decoding formats. Okay, in rant, sorry.
Oh, so let's say, for example, we did import something and we had a specific type for this operating system that was a Cyclone DX operating system type. in the Syft convert, we'd probably want that to be output to some analogous thing in SPDX, which has its own package type, which is different. So now all of a sudden we would start to have to kind of cross wires to figure out what we're supposed to be doing beyond the things that are in the top level Syft package.
Yeah. This would be what the primary purpose field for SPDX.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Let me go look up those values. Oh, and I guess which version of the spec? I'm gonna stick with like the 2x version of the spec. So
I think, I mean, it's still important to consider SPDX 3.0 is here, and all of the frictions that come with it do in some way affect this discussion as far as.
well, yeah, I could try looking them up for 3. I just pasted for 2 what they are, and there's a lot of 1-for-1s, but there are a couple that don't quite fit. But like application, library, framework, container, operating system, device, and firmware, I think map. And I'm not certain about the rest. I have to go back and look. Cyclone. So they're pretty close. But I'm with you. Like, I think it'd be wishful thinking if they're going to be 1-to-1 that they would be 1-to-1.
Right, but I guess, and my point was like not so much that they're 1-to-1, but that if I output something in SPDX, now the SPDX format has to check to see what, like, not just Syft package types, but also Cyclone DX package types, because of these other things that we might have picked up from during the convert or whatever.
Oh, you're talking about you're talking about the concept of having them on 2 different parts of the API.
Right. Yeah.
Got it. I understand. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think because it, from an encode decode perspective, we just treat them as strings. So I think it would be okay. So we're really just talking about when, like, a human at the keyboard with an IDE is trying to like use a package type in some use case that, like, extending like Syft in some way, making it obvious that it's not valid in a cataloger, but it is valid in other cases, like in the format package. Is there like a specific, like, are you talking about like in cases where we like want all types to be enumerated and if checking if it's a valid type kind of thing, or?
Well, I mean, if we import something from Cyclone DX that has the type operating system, let's just say for argument's sake that it has a dash in Cyclone DX and it doesn't in SPDX. I think it happens to be the same here, but like, let's say that like there's a slight difference and we can't just use the exact same string for whatever reason. Now we have to check to see, is this a Cyclone DX thing that I know about to output the right SPDX thing? And so like it kind of explodes combinatorically, like the types of things that we might have to start looking at if we have things in like different places or something. I don't know. It seems difficult to keep track of.
Well, we kind of already have that today. I mean, so my suggestion was to have like a Syft package type constants in the format package for each one of these across all formats that we want to express. And so it would mean that, say, for application here, we would have one Syft package type for application. And we know that when we're in the like SPDX encoder decoder, we're going to take whatever their specific, value of that is and translate it into ours. And same thing on the Cyclone DX side. The downside is that you do need those translation layers to do that. But the upside is that you have like one source of truth. It's what Syft says, like whatever Syft package types exist would only be allowed in, so to speak. So like so for your example of like a dash, like let's say that here SPDX has a dash. Let's just say that Cyclone doesn't, just for argument's sake. We as long as we do the mapping correctly, like, I know that when I'm doing decoding, I'm always going to this core type. And when I'm doing an encoded to SPDX, I'm using like the SPDX type defined it, then it should, we always have something to map to and from in the format models. But in the Syft core model, we should always have our own definition of what that is. If we're always using our own definition on the conversions, I think we're okay. But you're right, it's extra work for certain. Does that translate? Or
I think I may have been asking something in a way that wasn't making sense. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. That we should have our own type that we translate to and from, rather than just like accepting the things that from the formats directly. That absolutely is what I think we should end up doing. But
was that, sorry, I sound like I was missing something. Do you want to give a shot again? I can see if I can translate. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm slower than usual.
yeah, I'm slower than usual every day. So it's okay. So maybe I just misunderstood your suggestion. So I was under the impression that you were saying, okay, CycloneDX format would define its own package types that it might find during import. And so then we would get a Syft package with CycloneDX operating system type, for example. And then if I go to output in SPDX, now that has SPDX operating system type, which is potentially different than CycloneDX operating system type. So it would have to say, to switch on whatever things are in the main Syft model and all of the things that are in the CycloneDX model and all of the things that are in this SPDX model to get the right thing for SPDX.
Got it. In theory, it would only be if you're working in like using the CycloneDX types, you should only be using the CycloneDX constants there. And then if you're in SPDX, only use the SPDX types. And when you're going to any other type, it always goes through the Syft core types, and the core type should have their own equivalent. And it should be a superset of all options. So thus I should never be in SPDX and accidentally see a Cyclone like type. So like, say an operating system missing a dash or something, where SPDX, that's not the case.
Okay, right. So I guess maybe a little more specifically, what you're suggesting is like in the Syft PKG package, we would have like an operating system type there that the format's new to map to and from.
Yeah, I mean that.
Thing.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. I'm suggesting something that's essentially the same thing but a little different. It would be moving it into like the format package, or I'll just say a separate package, so that the use case within Syft, it's clear like this isn't actually representing a package and how the catalogers understand a package. And it could be that it lives in the package, but like we have a different prefix, and thus it's a little more clear that this isn't really a cataloger package type, so to speak. So I think there's something like to massage out design wise there, but I think I see what you're saying. Like, it's not that these types would live in like the SPDX format package or the CycloneDX package. It would still be a core type relative to either package or something next to package. I'll say so.
Okay, yeah, that was my misunderstanding. Then that was okay. Yeah, so I think we're basically in agreement then. Like, generally speaking,
I think so. Yeah.
It sounds like this is something we could probably move forward with. Figure the exact details out in a PR, perhaps.
Unless anyone else got any fun ideas on this one, like different abstraction or different something that we're missing out on. I think, like, this is my final thought on this one. Originally, I was thinking, oh, this if we bring in these things, it's no longer clear. Let me go back. One of the things that we try to keep clear in a Syft JSON document when we're just outputting from a raw scan is that these are the things that we found that are present. Even though SBOM formats can describe things such as, here's the relationships to packages that don't exist, we try not to include that as like separate packages in the SBOM because it's really easy for folks to misinterpret what the document represents. I think a lot of folks assume that if I see the package in the SBOM and the list of packages that are there, it's a package that is present. And only folks that really understand the nuances of these formats know, oh no, if I can only make that assumption if there's a relationship from the package to the source object, for instance. But I think a lot of users, that's not a common understanding. So my first gut instinct when like looking at pulling in these kinds of packages with these different types was to not include them because it's not clear whether or not they are present or not. However, I think all of these cases are going to be in the convert sense. Like we're pulling from somebody else's existing SPDX document or CycloneDX document. Thus, we already relax those requirements today. We try to pull in whatever we can. We don't know if these components are present or not because we never had the source, the target to go and scan to begin with. So anyway, that was my last thought. Sorry.
Sure. What should we do with this one then? Is it ready or what?
I think maybe that needs proposal sounds maybe like a thing, but also ready, and we can figure out the exact details in the PR. Seems like a good way to move that one.
Wow, that ate a bit of time, didn't it? We got a couple of false positives. Were they intentionally needs discussion? Who put those in?
Let's go look at the bottom
Will.
comment.
We'll skip these for now. They can eat up a lot more time, the false positive ones. So
Okay.
because we do have another topic that would probably be interesting to talk through.
Okay.
And that is
there an open issue for it?
There is. It is number. I was gonna go find it. Here we go. 3892 down here.
This one?
Yep.
Okay, who wants to kick this off?
I wrote the issue, so I can give a quick summary of what we're looking for with this one. So when you're generating a Syft JSON, or in any case, pretty much any SBOM format, sometimes you like to have the full data-rich object in one place, but you would want to see a separate, maybe like presentation-facing or slimmed-down version of the SBOM somewhere else. We think that for the convert command, this is the best spot to do this sort of either reduction in information or redacting or the ability to filter a couple of different fields or a couple different portions of the larger SBOM. The example that I put there is you can see we do Syft convert on the image Syft JSON. Our output wants to be CycloneDX. And in the spirit of our previous discussion, we want to filter some component types that might be verbose. So in this case, we wanted to filter out device drivers or files, but you could imagine how this could extend to filtering component types or other parts of the SBOM. Again, that above command is just kind of like an example of demonstrating the behavior that we want. This is, I guess this discussion is what does the UX and what does kind of the sizing or the scoping of the filtering look like if we were to land this in Syft. I have notes about SPDX 3.0 too, or 2.3, so that it's not just specific to CycloneDX. They have things like packages and files that have their own top-level fields that we can do filtering on. And then if we get into further business of 3.0, it's a little bit harder there to think about what filtering would look like for those documents, but maybe we can scope it to just 2.3 SPDX and the current version of CycloneDX.
So the one other thing I left a small comment about was I think that if we're going to do this, it's important to consider like what what we're saying to do, right? Like, are we strictly filtering the output, or are we saying I don't care about this thing, right? And I think the distinction, I brought it up because the example is like, if I don't care about files, then there's some other stuff we can skip doing in Syft. Like, we don't have to hash a bunch of files if we're not outputting files in the final result. This actually goes back like a bit to an idea that I had when we had a problem in Syft that SPDX, when you output files, requires SHA-1 hashes. And I was thinking, well, it would be cool if the format could say, I need this data. Syft does something and it makes sure to, to include that. And so this feels kind of similar to me. Like, hey, I'm looking for these specific types of things. You do it, like, do whatever you need to do, Syft, to give me these specific things. But that's a little bit more involved than like strictly just filtering. But obviously we would want to make sure that if somebody, made some sort of a selection like this, that we could, filter them as well. So, all right, that's my small thing.
Yeah, I mean, so that distinction is on like the cataloging path versus like the convert path. And I'm with you, there's like this connective tissue between them, because if someone is just running Syft and they're outputting cyclone.dx JSON, they might also want some of these same filters. Thus, it could influence cataloging. Is that like a good summary of?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can like make cataloging more efficient. Yeah, my gut is to maybe like put blinders on and have this, think about this only from like the convert perspective. But that's just my instinct. I'm not saying I'm right on that one. Because yeah, I also get the same sense that if we were to consider that, it's gonna like there's a lot more other things that attached to it that we'd have to start thinking about. Definitely harder to execute on.
Both those like pathways are easy, digestible on their own. Like you could still do the pure blinders on path of keep or remove, and then the result of that could then be enhanced by what Keith is talking about, of where you take into consideration what is being dropped and what is being removed, and see if you can do the performance gains of like not having to do that work in the first place, taking the config in. Like they're building blocks of each other. Like going one way doesn't mean you don't go the other way, kind of deal.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was thinking exactly what you said, which is, hey, we can just start with the filtering. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I think whatever we decide for like the flag name or whatever, like the types of things you're going to do the filtering, like might look a lot more like filters, or might look a lot more like cataloger selections, let's say, depending on like if we thought that it was important to be able to like have something that does influence like the whole round trip of Syft's behavior.
Is this the thing you're talking about? The section of files, and you're doing a hash on them, and you want to skip doing that, but also skip them even being in here in the first place?
Almost. I think what you're in right now, you're in a certain package has a metadata section that has files,
Okay.
and this is like, and these are package manager claims, whereas the section that Keith's talking about is not underneath artifacts, it's underneath files, and that is what we actually found. And so it's like, hey, we actually took the real digest. Here's what we actually found. And so the reason why the distinction is important is because you could technically look up a file in the file section, find the digest, take the file from the package metadata with the claims from the package manager and compare them, say like, oh, well, they both have SHA-1s. Do they match? If not, like maybe there's something wrong.
Okay.
Well,
Sorry.
another.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
I might be a little behind the 8 ball on this one, but I'm trying to figure out, like, let's say this is a configure, like this issue is about adding a filtering configuration in convert. So it's kind of around the assumption that the core SBOM, like the native format, has, let's just say for a second, has everything in it that we can possibly find. All the catalogers are turned on, files, digests, everything is switched on. So you've got this data source. Like adding the filtering to the convert side makes sense to me as long as there's something about the names of the filters that actually map naturally onto the specific format that you're converting to. Right, because I think otherwise we get into like this very low level of detail where you might want to filter or use this to filter out a named package and stuff like that. And at some point I'm like, that's not really a conversion function. It's more like, does Cyclone DX 1.6, by any convention, have a form that doesn't need the files section full stop? If that's the case, then I understand you might want to create an instance of a Cyclone DX document that doesn't have the files section because it's just wasted space that you know is never going to be used. But if there isn't kind of a natural set of filters that actually maps onto the format in question itself, then I'm struggling a little bit to figure out how to, like, where these filters should be configurable, you know, in the convert function. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying two things. One is like, how detailed should the scalpel be? And then another one is where it lives, so to speak. I might have gotten that last one wrong.
Well, I mean, I think if it lives in convert, which is what this is about, I think the granularity, which is kind of on the screen here, like it's this or this. It seems to me like the first one makes more sense as long as it can be applied given the format itself. I'm not sure there's a way to say generally for all formats that can convert supports. There's a natural categorization of things you either want to include or exclude. I think that might get that if we try to do the same filter names for all formats, then we might have to go all the way down to the granular level.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that first example that Alan has above the more flexible one, yep, you were just on it. You scroll back down. What Alex posted, to keep with the theme of Dan, saying that it has to be an element that is specific to the format that is your destination, you would need sections under convert that said like SPDX or Cyclone DX, and then say the exact like field or the exact thing that you're looking to keep or drop, because trying to do it across all formats, I feel like that you might say like some mean one thing on one side and some mean another on one side. We just saw it with Alan, which brought up files under packages that had the nuance of being package database claimed ownership versus files that are at the top level that are siblings to Syft that are ones that were part of the file cataloger that we pulled up. So it's not a one-to-one, like you're saying apple over here, the other guy's saying carrot, and you're just shaking the tree and you're dropping whatever comes out. Like it's not going to be clear to the user of which one gets dropped.
Well, that's kind of, yeah, that's right, Chris. That's kind of what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Like, what are the units that make sense generally versus like if we're just looking at convert Cyclone DX, what are the actual elements of that document that make sense to either filter in or out? I'm just kind of going back to like why, you know, I mean, if there is a common set across all of the formats we support, that's fine. But it doesn't seem to me like that's a safe assumption. Kind of to Chris's point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of depends, because like the way the convert works is we go from the target format, so let's just say SPDX, and then we convert to our Syft core model, which is very close to like the Syft JSON model. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's pretty close. And then we convert from there to the target format. So like say Cyclone DX. So there's this spot right in the middle where there is a common element, or it's like, okay, I either lost, so whatever I can't express in Syft core is lost, or it's expressible, you know, there, everything you need that is common amongst all of them is already there in that Syft core model. And so I kind of read it two ways. Like one, there's like this good single point to go and do some of this filtering. But this other point of view is if I have a Cyclone DXism that is just for Cyclone DX and there is no commonality there, I would not be able to express that a way to select and filter something specific out of that document. Did
And
we
also-
have?
Yeah,
Yeah.
without knowing some of the details of that core model. Like if the user had in mind, I understand the core model and these are the elements, top level, mid level, then, you know, specifying the filter granularity at that level would make sense. I'm trying to figure out how the end user like knows what things they want to filter out without having a specific idea in mind about the specific format they're looking to get.
Yeah, like I guess one that comes to mind is like Cyclone DX. You know, you have nested components.
Yeah.
Whereas like SIP-JSON, SPDX, it's much more of a here's your list of artifacts, and then it's like an adjacency matrix with the relationships. And it's so for Cyclone, you're kind of expressing relationships via nested components, and there isn't a way, like with what's up on the screen there, to really say, oh, select something within this other component. Like that would have to get thought through or really like configured separately. So like it would require like a Cyclone DX specific section, so to speak.
So I guess the way that I've been thinking about this problem is a bit like the SPDX 3 profiles, in a sense that I think the reason users would want to do this is because they only care about a certain set of things, right? Like if I go and scan a container, maybe I only care about the files and I just want to get a whole set of hashes because I want to save that. And the fact that there are a whole bunch of packages and all that, you know, I don't care about that. And I just want to exclude packages and just get the remaining stuff. And so it seems to me that like that's kind of the general case that I think we've been talking about. But that obviously doesn't allow for like really fine-grained filtering. And I just, if we should be doing fine-grained filtering, like that's a much different and harder problem to do.
Yeah,
For me, it turns into how fine-grained, because I could definitely see the argument like don't filter by like allowing filters for names would kind of be like maybe that's going too far. Filtering by type, I think, is this kind of a sweet spot in the middle where like I can see folks that are interested in like just RPMs in a base image, but like, you know, we might catch other kinds of packages, but it's like, no, I really just care about RPMs. So there's some in between. It sounds, Dan, you're about to say something.
No, I am. Well, I don't know. I guess, and again, I might be one step behind, but I think from this discussion, it seems to me like, well, another way to look at it is what you have on the screen here with convert files, relationships, packages. We know like those are pretty good categories that probably map somehow conveniently onto the various formats. I was kind of thinking of them originally as like each one has a section called that, but maybe that's not what it's intended to communicate. Like files is like kind of a meta filter name that just means the resulting SBOM drop all information about files, like the the stuff in the metadata, the stuff in the file section, like everything. This SBOM isn't concerned about files. And then there's a specific implementation of like what that means for Cyclone DX, which is different than what it means for SPDX, which is different for what it means for the native format. But essentially, it's a hint that says like, I user want an SBOM that doesn't have anything about files in it because I don't care about files. Same for relationships and packages. That's an interesting approach that I think is applicable. It makes sense to me, like from a user use case perspective. It does require an application of a bit more opinion on our side. Yeah. But,
Well, it definitely answers one of the questions I had. Like, I don't see a natural way with like the what's on screen here and like the second example to say, like, okay, I care about I care about files in the file section, but I really don't want to hear what the package manager says about this with the package.metadata.files in some metadata. So it's like, it's great that you captured that, but like, it's really verbose and I don't care. There isn't a nice way to express that. Maybe, and with what you're saying, it's like, well, maybe like the highest level cut of this is, well, we have an opinion in that it's, files is a meta switch for any section that has file information that we drop. And then in the future, if we wanted to have that extra scalpel, like we could add that in the future maybe, but but the first cut could just be like files drop, and that drops it in all those sections, not just literally the file section, which is kind of how I was first thinking about it. It's like, there's this file section, go drop the things in the file section. But
well, that's yeah, I was thinking about it that way too until this discussion. And I'm like, well, maybe it's actually more like that it's not describing a section, it's describing a concept that the user doesn't care about. It's an exclude filter after all. So it's like resulting SBOM, I don't care about things at the file level. So that's the intention. I mean, if that's our opinion on what the intention is, then this other way of looking at it might work.
As long as we stay like moving forward on this around the content types and like where all the formats intersect around those content types, then that's probably a good rule of thumb, where you just start slicing away from the documents, not a specific section, but all contents within that section that are of that type. It's just, I don't know, what happens if we start wanting to do designs that are out of bounds of those types? Like remove all, like with that, like when Alex talked about, oh, I want to get rid of everything that's like from the RPM database or package of this type. Like that's not a component or like metadata type of everything. It's just, it's very specific to packages. Yeah. Keith just posted dash packages :
Yeah. I've been putting a little thing in the chat here. We had a brief discussion about this before the call, and so I gave it a little bit of thought. And the thing I independently came up with is, this sounds really similar to cataloger selection to me. It's like we have a bunch of components that you do by default. I might want to disable one. I might want to say I only care about one thing. And so using the same kind of a syntax that we do for the cataloger selection thing seemed like a natural and easy way to take care of it. But I mean, that's just my naive idea.
Oh, you're just talking about like the graph, like how someone would input like a minus a thing plus a thing.
Right. Because
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, it could only be an exclusion, right? It could be like exclude this thing, right? But I mean, again, the way that I've been thinking about it is more like I'm concerned with a particular thing. I'm concerned with a particular type of thing. So like maybe I only care about packages and I don't care about anything else. So just give me packages only. Like that might be a thing I wanted to express. I don't know. Maybe not. And then I could just filter everything else out too. So it's kind of either way is okay.
I'm gonna put out. So like let's graphically. I'm gonna put that to the side for a second, but because I want to touch on one assumption that folks have mentioned, which is like this is only an exclusion, and I'm not entirely certain. Here's an example. Say I cared about only dependency relationships. So like right now we have a contains relationship, dependency of, a couple others, and it might just be that like I could see a very common case of folks just saying, I only care about package dependencies. I don't want to know about like build time dependencies, test dependencies. I don't want to know if this zip file contains these this zip or this package contains this other set of packages, or the ownership file overlap. I care about none of those. I only want dependency of. If you could do an exclude and then enumerate all the known types, but it's easier to say like exclude all, add dependency of, so to speak. which makes me feel, just from that one example, it makes me feel like it's not purely just an exclusion. You might want to express something that is like everything except.
I agree in terms of the way it's the way it's expressed through configuration, or the minus plus. Yeah, I totally agree. But like I guess I probably said that, but what I meant was, again, from like the user's perspective, because ultimately this is about a document that has less information, regardless of how you expressed it, than
Agreed.
all
Yeah.
of the information that exists. Yeah. So
I do agree with that. Yeah. So yeah, we're definitely not going to add information. Yeah. Sorry. And actually, come to think of it, like well, yeah. So just we take these two examples on the screen for a second. Like, even these aren't mutually exclusive. Like, from a YAML parsing perspective, like we could look for a singular field as a string, and treat the top case as like the meta example. But if somebody provides like an array of objects, we can treat it as a as a more nuanced operation. But like, we wouldn't have to like break the config, so to speak. As long as we know we want to keep the top level fields, so to speak, files, relationship, packages. Okay, so if I kind of undouble click on those specific examples and I kind of go to Keith, what you're saying, which is, would that be like a single array of like format and colon capability? Like, what's your suggestion specifically?
A single array of, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So you have these examples, and actually maybe I could put some of these in a comment in the issue. But like, you have the suggestion of like minus packages RPM, plus licenses content, is in the same way that we have the cataloging config. Is that this is just an array of like these strings?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially the same as the cataloger config, with the exception that like it probably wouldn't have like the defaults of like image and directory kind of stuff there. It's like it would be, but yeah, I mean, it would be basically like that, right? So if let's say I wanted packages and licenses, and that was all I cared about. I could have an array, one entry is packages, one entry is licenses, that would define the things that are there. Or let's say I wanted to remove, remove files, then I could put a minus files as one of the entries there, and it would keep all the defaults, which are, most of the things, and then just remove the files or something along those lines.
If you scroll down, Alan, I think I just captured what you just said, Keith.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
And like, the pro to something like this is that we actually don't need to enumerate or lock in the top level sections, so to speak. Like, every capability is its own string, and you can have like sub capabilities with the colons, etc.
You give yourself a lot of freedom. There's no, like, you can't, once it's in stone, it's not like it becomes a breaking chain from this, because filters can kind of get added or removed at will based on how you want to interpret it in the code. But it makes the code that interprets this very, and not, it's more difficult on the maintainership side, but we can do it.
Well, I think we just have something that parses. I mean, just like we do with the cataloger selection, we just have something that parses it into the set of things we're gonna return, right?
Yeah.
And so you always just check, like, everything just checks that at the end, and we just have one thing that, and we even have a library that kind of does like set operations like this. It's like it's used in one spot in our code, but it does exist.
Which lib is it?
Go, I think it's the Anchore Go collections. Is what we
Oh,
call it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's got a like something that makes doing set operations like this really easy.
We have so many like generic set, custom set, collection options dispersed now through the code bases. It's kind of we have a luxury of choices.
I feel like it's a measure of like how many and how large your products are, slash it's almost like a bit of a, you know, ice core sample of like through the Go ecosystem too. Like way back when, like they said, what sets are supposed to be like auto-generated code in the Go generate. Like, please never think about generics. And then like generics came along.
Yeah.
It's like, so we kind of have the size core sample of like all answers. We have some Go generated stuff. We have some sets that we've imported, and we have like some generic stuff at the same time.
Yeah, we've followed pretty much every Go blog post about how to do this at one point. So it's good. We have a collection of everything. We have a collection of collection implementations.
And I think okay, so the upside is you don't need to lock in these top level sections. It has the same kind of behavior where you can't change or interpret one of these strings differently than you have in the past. So like you have to know that like packages :RPM means a particular thing. I mean, we're not going to have IDE autocomplete for any of this anyway, regardless if it's just a YAML or semantic string. So I think that's probably fine.
I like that it gives us. I like the very first option of this. It gives us like a good first cut of just like cycle and DX, access the field, Syft JSON, access the field, SPDX, access the field, and that like you can kind of build out from there to make it as narrow as packages, or as narrow as licenses, or as narrow as some kind of thing files that are belong to a package. But like the top level slice is just, we know you're going to this destination format. What thing on that destination do you not want to see? Do you want to see reduced?
I'm writing what I think is shorthand. Like I think this actually gets expanded out. I'll edit this comment and see if I can get it updated.
Thank you. We are at time. I don't think we want to pick up a false positive now, do we?
Nope.
Only unless you can guarantee it's a true positive, and we can just like flip it. We can turn it around immediately in 1 minute.
No guarantees, no refunds. Right. Thank you, everyone. Those were deep. I wonder what the AI summarizer is going to think of that conversation when it tries to summarize that. That'll be fun. Find out tomorrow. Thank you, guys. See you all next week. Have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. Cheers.